It's simple, really. Great stories with a good cup of tea. It's the Tea with Mike show. Welcome to episode 99 of the Tea with Mike show with Brieann. On this episode, we talk about hockey, journalism, media, and traveling. So grab a cup of tea, sit back, and enjoy. Alright guys, welcome to another episode of the Tea with Mike show. As always, I'm excited to have another conversation with someone completely new on this particular occasion. We've barely ever met before this, but that doesn't mean it's going to not be a good conversation and story. And of course, I hope you get value from our conversation today, basically. So please welcome for episode 99 of the Tea with Mike. Brieann, welcome to Tea with Mike, Brieann.
I'm so excited to be here. I also can't believe I'm number 99. I'm stoked about this.
Yeah, no, it's just crazy how I've been ticking along, and it's like, oh, yeah. I've drank 99 cups of tea. That's a true fact.
I think that's an accomplishment. To drink 99 cups of tea, I don't think I've had 99 cups of tea in my life. So that's a props to you.
I think I average about like 5 to 7 a day. That's kind of crazy if you do the math.
Okay, that's a lot of tea, but is it all the same kind of tea, or do you have different flavors that you go to throughout the day?
No, it's like at this particular point in time, it's like all the same tea.
Oh wow, that's impressive. I'm impressed.
Yeah, so we can talk a little more about that later, but. So first off, where do you call home?
Oh, that's a great question. Right now I live in Vernon, BC. It's my hometown. It's where I'm currently right now. But it's not where I plan to be forever. Fingers crossed. But for now it's home.
That's intriguing. So where do you hope to end up eventually?
I would love to live in Vancouver or on the Lower Mainland. I've lived down there for a year before, and it was amazing. I've got a lot of friends and people that I already know down there, so I'm well established. And just with the career path I'm getting into, I would need to kind of be in a bigger market. So hopefully Vancouver would be great.
Fantastic. And so let's go back to your a few years for you, what were you like as a student in school? What were some of your favorite subjects, worst subjects, that type of thing?
So it's funny because when I was a student in high school, I went to the same school from kindergarten to grade 12. So I went with all the same kids, all the same friends. I was a very quiet, introverted kid. I didn't really make friends. I kind of just kept to myself. I was very quiet, very I kind of just did my own thing. I was shy. I was horrendously shy, which didn't help that you had the same friends all through school. You never really had to meet new people or make friends. Right. And then school-wise, I loved English, which everyone thinks is hysterical, but I even loved even reading Shakespeare. I loved learning about and just doing English projects and reading and stuff. I also loved social studies and getting into history. Those are my two main classes that I did well in. Past that, and actually I really liked in my grade 11 and 12 years we did visual arts media, so making movies and putting together and editing videos, which is something I'm quite passionate about. So those 3 courses were probably my favorite in school.
Fantastic. Yeah, so that must be quite challenging being with the same people for that amount of time, right? Because everybody over time forms friendship groups, etc.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting.
But also, like you mentioned, it doesn't give you necessarily the opportunity to expand your communication skills, because you get into whatever the conversation may be with those people, and it probably doesn't change and evolve as much.
No, it doesn't. That's a fantastic question. Yeah, it never really did. I always had I had the same friend group. Every so often, there'd be new kids that would join the class, obviously in the next grade level. But it's I had the same handful of friends, so kindergarten all the way up, and I kind of only hung out with them. I didn't really like see or talk to too many people. There were some days where I'd even just be kind of like on my own. I'd go like I'd eat lunch really quick and then go hide in the library and read books and kind of just ignore everybody, which is looking back, it's such a weird thing because I'm so much more of a different person now. That when I do see my friends outside of high school, they're like, "What happened to you?" Like, this is probably the most I would talked in like a between us right now is what I probably would do in about a week. So it's crazy.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Also, and then so did the K1 to 12. So the only real change was the teachers and the subjects that you were learning and being taught.
Yeah. Well, even then, some of the because it was a small school I went to. So some of the teachers that taught me in grade 6 ended up teaching me in grade 12. So it was like weird crossovers. Yeah, yeah. Like my grade 6 teacher ended up teaching me English 12 and was in our like high school. So it and my grade 3 teacher was also one of my high school teachers. So there was a lot of crossover, which made it kind of weird because then they like remember you when you were 8 and now you're like 16 and
Oh,
it's kind
that's
of
strange.
awkward. Yeah, it's strange.
Oh, nice. Okay, so obviously, when I was learning more about you, but obviously to get some baseline for our conversation,
Yeah.
I understand that you became interested in broadcasting and journalism from a young age. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that and kind of what sparked that interest,
Yeah,
going off the visual art training and all that type of thing?
for sure. I've I've always been a curious kid. Like I've always just been wanting to like know things and know how people and things work. I remember I'm a big like sports person, which I know we'll probably get into. But I'm a big sports fan. I grew up loving hockey, and I remember I don't know if it was every grade or every year, we'd always have one of our local, the Vernon Vipers, one of them came in and just hung out with us in school. And I remember for one of my assignments, I randomly got to interview him, and I was asking like 12-year-old questions like, do you like board games? Do you like going to practice? Like things like that. But in the back of my brain, I was like, oh, I might be interested in doing this kind of thing. So then I kind of put it on the back burner because I wasn't sure really what I wanted to do. Even when I got into grade 12 and they're like, make a decision on what you want to do with your life. I'm like, I don't know. But then it was that great being in the visual arts course where I kind of like learned about like video editing and how to interview, like very basic stuff. And I'm like, this is kind of fun. And one of our final projects, I was going to interview one of our local hockey players. Like him and I had been chatting. We were gonna interview, and then he got seriously injured and couldn't make the
Oh,
interview, which made me really sad. But I was glad that like I got to make that contact. Everyone thought I was a little weird that I wanted to get into broadcasting, being such a shy human being and a introverted being. But when I was just like looking at schools and looking at like life choices, I'm like, you know what? I have always just wanted, I like asking questions. I like being nosy, which is why I tell people I'm going into journalism. It's because I just like to be nosy and want to know more about people. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just take a shot at being a broadcaster and see where this goes. And it's been a long journey since 2012 when I first started, but I think it's just getting going, and I'm so excited.
fantastic. And then so let's take it back to grade six for a while.
Okay.
Like, do you remember much about some of those like first interviews that you were doing, and how did you kind of get involved in those like interviews,
I think
creating that opportunity?
that one was more of a one-off interview because from what I remember, we were doing a project for English or something, and I don't know if like one of the books we were reading, I don't know, it fell apart. And so for like a makeup assignment, me and 3 of my friends who were in this group together got to go interview the Vernon Viper, but I like took over because I'm like, guys, I'm gonna ask all the questions. So we had written out like, oh, it was a whole bunch of questions. I can't even like I just remember to this day the board game question. I don't know why, but we asked him if he liked board games. I still remember his name. His name is Mike Ulrich. I look him up the other day just for this nostalgia because I remember him. But that was kind of like the first interview I did. I don't remember if I did anything else in high school or middle school that much, but I just remember the grade 6 when it's that defining, oh, I might like doing this kind of thing.
Oh, that's super cool. And then so what today? What's the most memorable interview that you've done? Oh, and like why?
Oh, okay. So when I was in university, I was working on a documentary. I went to university in Calgary. So I was doing a documentary on I think it was the 25th anniversary of the '88 Olympics. And I was just trying to get some sources. And I had gotten an interview with Ken Reid, who was one of the crazy Canucks back in the day, but I didn't know who he was. So I phoned my mom. I was like, Mom, I have this interview with this guy named Ken Reid. And she's like, you need to look up who this guy is. I'm like, what do you mean I need to look him up? So I Googled him and I'm like, so you're telling me I'm going to go interview a world champion alpine skier from like the 80s who like is this huge Canadian icon for a university project in school. Like it blew. I didn't think that I'd be able to interview somebody of like that high caliber as a 20-year-old kid in college, but he was the nicest guy. Like I showed up for the interview and he was a little bit late and he was carrying coffee. He's like, "Oh, if I had known that you had like coffee, I would have bought you one." I'm like, "Oh, it's fine." Like that kind of thing. Like he was super nice and I just remember sitting there like, "What is happening right now? Like how did this happen?" It was such a cool experience.
Awesome. And then I can definitely relate to your answer. Like even like with the Tea with Mike show at the beginning, it was like, am I good enough to do this?
Yeah.
How good are the questions? Like what's the guest really thinking about? Like will the audience like it like afterwards? And but it's just something I think that, and I'm sure you know from what you've done so far and what you hope to keep accomplishing. It's just something that gets like anything like with practice, just like more comfortable with time,
Hmm.
and then it gets to that point, and you might not necessarily like know it, but the dynamics of the interview change when you get to a certain point because you've talked to so many other people, and it's a person at the other end of the screen or in person, depending on the interview setting,
Yep.
like versus the name. And that's what I'm learning with my show too. Like everybody like has a story. It doesn't matter if you're Beyonce or me
Yep.
or you or etc. etc.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I really, yeah, it's one of those things that, and you're so right. It gets easier time. Like even like right now with what I'm doing, which I'm sure we're getting into, with working for the BCHL network. I've done a couple interviews, and it's still kind of like I have that background, but it's been so long since I've been doing interviews that I still get nervous. I still think, have I messed this up? What are they thinking? That kind of thing. Like and I think I've done 4 interviews for the network now, and I'm like, hopefully I haven't messed any of this up yet. So, but so far so good, I guess.
Fantastic. And so we'll just have a brief pause for a little staple tea fact, as the
Yes.
show is partly becoming known for. So today's tea fact is the only state with a major tea plantation is South Carolina. This is where the brand American Classic is made, and that's been the official White House tea since 1987. And this comes from swansonvitamins.com/blog/Jenna/teafacts. So that's kind of cool.
I didn't even know there was a tea plantation in the States. That's so cool.
Neither did I. Google's an amazing thing, isn't it?
That's an amazing tea fact. I'm gonna use that one when people need random facts. I'm gonna break that one out.
Nice.
College, and like we got to like just even like a basic news story is telling a story that you might otherwise not have never known, but you get the opportunity to tell that story, and you get to be invested in people's lives, and you can help bring the change that maybe some people are looking for. So I think it's important just to like know people and to know I don't know. I'm just so passionate about getting stories out there and being able to make a difference in people's lives. Like I love the stories where people like somebody needs help and then suddenly hundreds of people heard the news story. Now they're helping out the cause. Or in sports, I like the human aspect of sports. So being able to tell stories about players that you like a side of them that you might not quite know about, or doing that little bit of digging and finding out, putting more of a personality to just these players that play hockey. They could be, I know one of the Canucks likes to cook. Like you can do like just like learning things like that and being able to share things like that. and just I don't know. I'm so I love it too much.
No, I would again. I agree with like what you said, and it's something again I've learned with the Tea with Mike show. You could be interviewing someone that has done 5 times as many interviews as you've ever done, and is seasoned in front of the camera, and is seasoned in front of millions of people. But like it doesn't matter of any of their previous accomplishments. Most of the time, they're struck on a like deep level, and then they get more like personable with you. If you ask them something that they've never been asked before, like you were saying, oh, I didn't know you liked cooking with tomatoes, or you jumped off a waterfall for your 45th birthday, right? It's those little tiny details.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's what makes. I think that's what makes journalists good. That's the difference between good journalists and great journalists, is you knowing those tidbits and facts and being able to use them. Yeah.
Nice. No, thanks. Cool. All right. So what was it like going to broadcasting school in Calgary between 2012 and 2014? What did it teach you?
It taught me a lot. So going back to like talking about being a kid from a single school who didn't have any friends, I had to learn how to make friends for the first time in my life. I mean, it helped that one of my best friends went to Mount Royal with me. Like we didn't weren't in the same program, but we went to the same school.
Well, that
So
helped.
we talked about, had already was planning on going to Mount Royal, and she casually asked me, she's like, oh, maybe you should apply and we could go to Mount Royal together. And so that's kind of how I got into the broadcasting program in Mount Royal, is because of my friend. But because I also really wanted to go there. So yeah, I had to learn how to make friends. I had to learn how to talk to people, which, being somebody that's trying to get into communications, seems like such a weird thing that you have to do. But no, broadcasting school was one of the best experiences of my life and some of the hardest experiences of my life. Being 18 and going to college, I, looking back, was not ready to move out of my house, to a different province, into a massive city that I'd never been to before. But I thought I was ready. I'm like, let's move out. It was challenging. Broadcasting school was super busy. Like first year, like it was more than just sitting down and doing book knowledge. We had every week we had our own 2-hour radio show, so we had to prep for radio shows. We had to go be on the air for 2 hours. We were writing news stories for radio. We were like prepping a whole bunch of other things, doing interviews for projects. And then in our second year we did television, which was 10 times more stressful, because every week in our second semester we did our own TV news show for an hour. So throughout the week, you're again planning shows or planning stories, going out and filming them, getting interviews on top of like all the other projects and you're doing. So they made sure that you really didn't have a whole lot going on in your last year, because we were swamped. Like it was bad. Like we were filming documentaries. It was like it was insane and crazy, but it was insanely stressful, and somehow I passed all of my courses and got my diploma. But it was also just fun to do something that I actually understood and was good at. Because like growing up, I don't know, like I was never good at science, never good at math, but like to sit with a group of people that like knew what we were talking about and I don't know, it was just something rewarding. For the first time in my life, I'm like, oh hey, I actually understand all this, and this is kind of fun. So yeah.
Fantastic. All right, and then let's go to some of the stuff you kind of do like more currently. So I understand that you're a writer for the BCHL network, so British Columbia Hockey League. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so tell us a little about it and what skills you're developing from even that you learned at Mount Royal, and how are you applying it now?
For sure. So the BCHL network, we're the largest group in BC that are covering junior A hockey. So junior A hockey, there's many different teams. Like there's 17 teams in BC. I think right now we're running, oh gosh, I don't know the exact numbers. We have a handful of teams we still don't have. So I cover the Vernon Vipers, so I exclusively write about them. It's weird because this is more print journalism that I'm doing, which I have like very little experience in. Like I don't have a 4-year degree in journalism. I do broadcasting. So I'm really learning how to expand my brain a little bit, like, because the sentence structure and how to write are two totally different things for print and for radio, or for even for TV. Like for radio and TV, it's right down to the point. You don't give a whole lot of details. You just say it. Whereas more print, you have to give all the details. You gotta like. So I'm really kind of learning how to do journalism print on the fly. But I actually have to thank COVID, the pandemic, for this opportunity. COVID's ruined a lot of stuff, but it made this opportunity happen. So I think it was April, saw on Twitter that they were looking for writers to cover for next season. And I'm like, you know what? I said, I have no experience in journalism. I've written a couple articles for a friend of mine on her blog, so I'm like, I have a little bit, but I was willing to try. And they're like, yeah, sure, let's bring you on. So I've written 14 articles for them, and I'm the only girl right now doing it full time. We've had a couple that have tried and it hasn't worked out, but I'm the only girl, so I'm kind of not really earning my pull is the bad thing to say. But I'm trying to represent all the females in media right now. But no, I'm having a blast. It's been fun to kind of just write about something I'm so passionate about, and people seem to like my stuff. I think the best article I wrote was the one where I just got to make fun of all the BCHL logos for 1,000 words. It was great. I didn't know if I was going to be allowed, but I just made fun of logos, and it was one of the best articles I wrote. So
nice. And then so obviously in broadcasting and more generically in life, networking is super important. So I just wanted to briefly touch on like how we became connected for this conversation. So a previous guest on the show, Paul Figler, who is the CEO of Dub Network, which is all about hockey and the WHL in Alberta and beyond, connected the two of us together, and me and Paul also took a few marketing classes together. So I want to know, how did you become connected with Paul?
Paul is a part of the BCHL network as well. Like he's in our Slack group and he talks to us. He hasn't like written anything for us. He's also I'm taking a course through BCIT at the moment, sports broadcasting, and he's in that class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we kind of talked a little bit there, and we interact on Twitter every week for class. And then he mentioned that you were wanting to diversify your people on your show, and that put me in touch with you, and now here we are.
That's a demonstration of how social media can be a good thing.
Yeah.
Because life is so short. There's only so much time in the day, and sometimes you need to reach out to others around you to help you achieve a goal or to help connect you with like different people. So I think that's an example of social media and the digital world like working well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm the first to admit that I spend way too much time on social media, and I'm way too invested on what happens to people that I've never met. But I've been, especially with this experience now, and being in the media a little bit, networking has been so crucially important. I've been meeting people and interacting with people that I never thought that I'd get to, and just trying to get like my name out there and just getting advice from different people. Like I've been in touch with a couple of the play-by-play announcers for some of the different teams here, and just it's been kind of fun. Even some of the people that write for the Dub Network, we've been in touch, and we throw ideas back and forth, and we retweet each other's work, and we hype each other up. So
which is what's needed too, right? You have to create that core like support group where you can genuinely ask those challenging questions to help you improve both personally and professionally, but to people that you know like have your interests at heart because they share the same passion, hobbies, interests, professional career, whatever that may be, right?
For sure. Yeah, no, it's I've made a lot of like friends and colleagues through like networking, and it's been nice to meet people that are doing the same thing that you're doing and know that might have your back in certain things. It's been very fun.
Awesome. And then, so obviously, broadcasting and journalism, and that is not the only thing that you have an interest and also professional interest in. Oh, but before we go to that, what would be your dream job in broadcasting and journalism
Oh,
and media?
it changes daily. I would love, it's twofold. I would love to work for the Vancouver Canucks one day because they're the team that I've always wanted to work for since I was a kid. They're the team I love the most as a kid. I would also love to cover an Olympic Games, both winter and summer, because as much as I'm a hockey fan, I'm a general sports fan too. And whenever the Olympics come on, I'm basically a fan of every single sport, and I'll watch anything just because it's on. And I would just love the opportunity to like cover. Wouldn't even care if I covered weightlifting. Like would love to cover a sporting event in another country that's as big as the Olympic Games are. Because I'm the biggest proponent for the Olympic Games. I know that it's a lot of money to hold, but it brings us that joy that we need every 4 years to kind of just collectively, as a world, watch greatness. And I want to be a part of that one day.
Awesome. And I like you, I also love the Olympics, and I got a cool story. So, back when the Olympics was in London in 2012, the Olympic torch came through my school. So I got with it, and it toured around our school, and all the buses and the personnel like stopped off because we had this like big like bus pack. It was like a rest stop, so we like hung out with all those people, and we got to like take time out of school day. And I got from this hand to this hand from the Olympic torch, and it was just a real surreal like moment in time.
Yeah. Yeah, like even when the Olympics were in Vancouver, which came through our area too, and just kind of realizing that wait, the Olympics are like in your like kind of like hometown or home province, it just made it kind of like more real. And even when like they were on in Vancouver, we got to like that's all we talked about. Like that's all we talked about. We even had it playing during our like lunch hour. Like there's some hockey games on, all of us would just gather around and watch it. And it was like, and that was part of that part of gave me some part of the drive that I'm like, oh, let's experience to be just a fan watching it, and but now to have I'm like I want the experience of being a reporter, being able to talk about it, and plus there's the travel aspect. I'm like I would love to cover games in another country, because that's just because you get to spend 2 weeks in a big city covering sports. I'm like, how could that be any better? Like,
Yeah, no, and I've been lucky enough to experience like several of those moments. Like also when the FIFA World Cup was on, I think it was even in Brazil in 2002. At my school, this is a different school to the one I just talked about. This was when I was much younger, probably like 5, 6, 7, or 8, something in there. The headmaster or the principal, as it's known in North America, was a huge like football fan. So they'd have the games on the TV, like you do like, and it was early morning, so you'd watch it instead of lessons, and like you'd have these big parties. So I can definitely relate. So let's talk a little bit about travel, because I know you're an avid traveler, pre-pandemic and hopefully post-pandemic.
hope
So
so.
do you want to tell us how you became interested in traveling, and maybe your favorite travel story and best country you've been to, something like that?
Sure. So the traveling thing, it was weird because I was always growing up, I was very much a homebody, didn't really want to go very far. When I was, oh, how old was I? When I was 15, I guess I was 15, our school every year, they do a humanitarian trip to Mexico and they build houses. So that was the first time that I'd ever, actually, no, that's a lie. Sorry. 2006, my mom won a trip to Mexico over the radio for like all inclusive, all expense paid. And they paid for my sister and I to go along. So first time I ever traveled, been on a plane. I can't remember how old I was. I guess I was 12, I guess. We went to Mexico for a week, and then I guess 3 years or 4 years later, I went to build houses in Mexico. So I got the two different experiences of the luxury resort and then the immense poverty. That's the last time I'll ever go to Mexico. And then in 2017, my friend who I went to college with, she was visiting here, and we were just chatting one summer about possibly going traveling together. And we're like on a whim, we're like, let's see how much it costs to fly from Calgary to London direct. And we found out it was $700 return. We're like, well,
That's the
that's a
deal.
great. And then I'm like, that's a steal of a deal. And it was for the end of October. We're like, you know what? This is too good of an opportunity to pass up. So we're like, let's just book these plane tickets. We're like, who cares if it's off season? Like, that's the best time to go is when there's no tourists around. And so we're like, okay, cool. So then I got thrown into how to plan for a trip. And it was a backpacking trip. So we went for 3.5 weeks, and all we took was just some backpacks. We stayed in hostels. We had good hostels. We also had a sketchy hostel in London, which I'm glad we were only there for a night because it was a sketchy area, and it was not a good time. But we lived to tell the tale. I'm here to tell you the tale. And ever since I went on that trip, it was like 3.5 weeks. We went to, okay, let's see, we did England, Ireland, Scotland, Northern Ireland, France, and then we hopped over because we were in Nice. We hopped over to Monaco and to Italy for 8 hours, but we still went to Italy. It counts. Ever since that trip, have fallen in love with traveling. Like, I'm like, this is the coolest thing because it's like, again, kind of to go back to the storytelling thing, you get to learn about people and their cultures, and you get to like try different things, and you just get to be immersed in something different, which I loved. And then last year I went on a trip to South Africa for 2 weeks. I had never had any interest in going to South Africa. Africa was never on my radar of places I wanted to go, just because we all know like the poverty and I didn't want to. But actually, it was through my church. We went together, and I was already all planned for us. So I was like, you know what? Let's jump on a 16-hour the flight we took to get to South Africa from Atlanta was 16 hours. It was brutal. By like hour 12, I'm like, let's get off this plane. I've watched every movie that you could think of. And that was a great experience. Like, I think out of all the countries and people that I've met, the South Africans are some of the nicest people that I've ever met. They were generally like wanted to know how we were. They were just so welcoming. They're like, you can come into our house after meeting them, like at the front door. They're like, yeah, come on in. We're like, okay. And I think the most meaningful thing is we had a potluck with some people in Africa, and these people had saved up a bunch of their money so that they could buy the ingredients to make us food for this one night. And I'm like, I'm like, they've been saving for months, and that money could have went towards like their own selves, but they saved up and they made us a meal. And that's probably the best experience I've had in any country that I've been to.
Cool. And then I also believe it's your goal, your mission, to travel to what are we going with? Like every country in the world, or
every continent, because every country
continent.
just seems every country is just too much, and there's some countries I refuse to go to. But every continent. So I've been to Europe, and I've been to Africa. So I have a few left. I think the ones that I'm most concerned about is South America, because I really have no desire to go to South America. I don't know why. Asia, if I could go to Japan, that would be fine. And Australia, I'm already semi-planning to go there already. So it's not an if for Australia, it's a when I can go to Australia.
Awesome. And then so when you're traveling to all these different places, do you go with the same people or different people?
The first trip, the big trip, was just me and a friend of mine, which was great. The trip to Africa was with a whole bunch of people. So I've only ever done a couple different trips, so it's kind of hard to say. I know that the next trip that I'm potentially going on in 2022 is going to be with a lot of the same people that I went with on the Africa trip, and we all get along great. Like, so it's fine. But yeah, I don't know. I hope I don't know. That's a tough question for me.
Cool. All right, and let's end the episode with one piece of advice that you would give to someone based off your own experience and story like so far, who may be interested in getting into something creative, including broadcasting, journalism, and media, etc.
Oh, that's a great question. My advice would be, I have a couple pieces. First is take every opportunity that comes at you, whether it's small or big. Just say yes to everything. In college, I said no a lot, and I think I lost out on a lot of opportunities. But say yes to things like I'm here on the Tea with Mike show. Like that's awesome. I said yes to that. Um, to not like regret anything that you do. If you think that you've like flubbed an interview, that's okay. You know how to move on and do it properly the next time. And I guess if you're wanting to get into broadcasting or any kind of like journalism thing, just play to what your assets are. If you're good at something, really hone in on that one skill and really, I guess, milk it for what it's worth. Like if you're really good at interviewing, then do that. If you're very good at being on camera, then play to that strength, because broadcasting and journalism is a very competitive industry. You want to stand out somehow, so just play to your strengths.
Those were 3 great pieces of advice, and that comes to the end, at least of our conversation today. So thank you so much for spending some time with me and taking time out of your life.
Oh, this has been I had such a great time. I must say, I was very nervous to come on, but you put me at ease with everything. No, this was great.
Well, I can only say thank you, and also kudos to you for taking the advice that you literally just gave like 15 seconds ago and actually implementing that. So kudos to you too.
Thanks.
All right, guys, thank you for watching episode 99 of the Tea with Mike show. Make sure you check out some of the other great stories from guests on my website, which is where you're hopefully watching this conversation. That's obviously teawithmike.com. And thank you for continuing to watch and support the Tea with Mike show. And we'll see you again very soon. Thanks, everyone. It's the Tea with Mike show.